Welcome to this mini module. Now, this module is on listening skills. Listening skills is something that is extremely vital to coaching and to almost all leadership in general. Now, within listening skills, today we're going to discuss three different types or three different forms of listening: superficial, active, and deep listening. The first two are types of listening processes that we normally use either in everyday life or when we work in groups, etc. In EYP, we normally stick to superficial listening or active listening. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about another way of listening, which isn't something we naturally do, or at least most of us do not naturally do, which is deep listening. And this is what's required more for coaching. So first of all, superficial listening. What is this? Well, when you listen to someone on a superficial level, it means you're not really taking everything in. In other words, while you're talking to me, I could be thinking about something else, playing with something else, or listening to someone else's conversation, etc. I could be multitasking. And while I'm doing that, I can still understand almost everything you're saying, because I can listen to, let's say, every fourth word or every fifth word, and my mind would piece together the sentences together. I won't be able to remember everything perfectly, but if you ask me to kind of sum up your discussion, I could probably do it. This is superficial listening. This is what we use on a normal, everyday basis. Majority of the time we listen superficially because it's extremely effective, efficient. We can do other things while we're listening. Active listening, this is us being completely engaged with what the person's saying. While they're saying something, we could be thinking of, let's say, ways that integrates within our knowledge or different aspects like this. And maybe we're thinking of another kind of reply we could add to this conversation. So as soon as they finish talking, we can kind of join in and build upon this knowledge. This active listening is what we tend to praise quite a lot. And it's really great in terms of building a good dialogue, building good kind of teamwork, etc. Deep listening, however, is something a lot more rare. Deep listening is having zero thoughts go through your mind while you listen. Now, when I say this like this, you may think, well, of course I can just listen into somebody without thinking of anything, but in reality it becomes a lot more difficult. So for deep listening, within coaching, we have all different exercises that we do in order to train ourselves to deep listen. First of all, we have to realise that we don't listen on a deep level. And how we do this is you can pair up with someone. You could kind of explain them a little bit about different listening processes and say, I want to try this, just a little exercise with you. And you get them to talk to you for, let's say, 3 minutes about any topic. So you're in a pair, one person talks to the other one for about 3 minutes about whatever they want. And the other person isn't allowed to say anything. You can't say yes, you can't say no, you can't say anything, you just have to listen. And while you listen, you have to clear your mind. You're not allowed to think of anything. Instead, you must just focus in on what they're saying. When I say clear your mind, I don't mean completely ignore the person in front of you. You have to be, if not more engaged than ever in what they're saying. But you're not allowed to think of a similar experience you've had. You're not allowed to think of anything else that could come into your mind. And when it does come into your mind, hold that thought, get rid of it, and try to clear your mind again and refocus back in. Now, this is extremely difficult for most of us to do over a 3 minute period at the beginning. And this is when we start to realise that deep listening is actually quite difficult. We're not used to doing this. This is like a first exercise we can do to kind of get used to understanding what deep listening is and seeing how difficult it is. We can take it a step further when you start to get a bit better at this. It's an exercise in which you have person A and person B. Person A will say to person B, we'll talk about a strength. For example, I could say, I'm a generous person. And I can kind of say like what I have to give empirical evidence. I have to give 2 or 3 examples of why I think I'm a generous person. I can take a minute or 2 minutes to talk about this. And the person who's listening, using deep listening, so not thinking of anything else, just using deep listening, has to then at the end of the person's talking, has to say thank you, pause for a second, and then reply, giving evidence and another adjective. For example, within this I could say, okay Nathan, you said that you did X, Y, Z. From this information, I think you are also a smart person, or you're also a good driver, or something like this. So you have to kind of take from what they've said and rework it around and find what does that also give them in terms of a strength. So why is this really difficult? Well, when you listen on a deep level, you're not allowed to think. That means coming up with that answer at the end of it, saying thank you and replying to them is really difficult when you listen on a deep level. It's extremely easy if you're active listening because you're thinking at the same time. But when you do it on a deep level, it's really difficult. This is why you need the pause for a few seconds afterwards to think about something and then reply. So when you do this as a coach would always wait at least a couple of seconds, if not 3 or 4 seconds, after the person has spoken. So after the chairperson has spoken to me as a president or a vice president, it would take me quite a few seconds afterwards to actually think what I'm going to say next, because I haven't got it ready in my mind because I was just deep listening. Now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, deep listening sounds kind of really difficult to master, it's a really difficult listening skill, but why should I do it in the first place? Why is it important? Well, what deep listening does is it provides space for the other person to develop. It provides them space for them to think and them to feel listened to. I'm pretty sure you've had it in the past when you're talking to somebody and they're just looking at you and they're completely engaged and you can tell that they're listening to every word you're saying. You feel like you want to talk more. You feel that you want to open yourself up a lot more. However, when you're talking to someone and every 2 seconds they're kind of looking away or playing with something, you kind of don't feel that connection. So what happens when you listen on a deep level is you create a lot more engagement with the other person, and the other person feels a lot better and they can actually reveal and open themselves a lot more. And because within coaching, we said that you are not there to provide advice, you are not there to provide your examples. If you're listening on a deep level, they can see that you do not want to enter the conversation, that you just want to listen to them. And because that's the case, they're going to come out with their examples and they're going to come out with their ideas rather than waiting for you to jump in to offer yours. So I'm pretty sure that you've all seen, like say, when you were a chairperson, you're talking to a VP or a president or someone like that, and as soon as you kind of said half of the problem, they're already there thinking of an answer, trying to jump in and give you this bit of advice. That's this more active listening, or maybe even superficial listening. But then when you go for this deep side, you really give them the space. So this is the thing about listening skills. A coach should try to develop deep listening, and you can try those 2 exercises. On the first hand, just listening to somebody. It could be in an everyday conversation when someone's talking to you. Just try to bear in mind, are you thinking about something else? And if you are, hold that thought, get rid of it, and start deep listening. And then afterwards, try to interact with the person by talking to them about what they've been talking about, but without thinking about it before. So having that little pause to kind of think to yourself, okay, this is what they've said. Yeah, I could reply like this, etc. And this will actually enhance your deep listening skills, which is an amazing skill as a coach.